Now, Don Watkins wrote a very interesting piece last week for the Federalist. Now, he basically lamented about the woes of the rich and how they're being they're being maligned by the poor and how it just happens to be so unfair. Now, throughout the article, he basically asked, why are you hating and maligning on rich people? Why aren't you thanking us? So here's where he begins. He said, in the wake of the endless controversies surrounding Donald Trump's campaign, it's easy to forget that most of us rightfully pride ourselves in our opposition to racism, sexism, anti-Semitism, and other forms of unjust discrimination. Well, already, okay, I'm there. I'm with you, right? Yes, we are against unjust discrimination. Now, he continues, but we rarely even discuss another prevalent form of prejudice, the demonization and dehumanization of the successful. Wow. So, understand what he's talking about. He thinks that we are dehumanizing and demonizing people who are successful. That's amazing. We demonize people so much. Successful business people. I mean, look, when's the last time a successful business person got elected president or had sycophants like Don Watkins write an article about them? Oops. Oh, right. Okay. Anyway. Now he continues. This prejudice is central to today's chief economic concern, the campaign against income inequality. So if you're fighting against the massive amounts of income inequality that we have now, which is at record levels and is comparable to the 20s, right before we had a massive economic meltdown, well, don't worry. That's not a real concern. You're just being prejudiced. You're being prejudiced against successful people. Okay. But wait. Before you get mad, Watkins wants to assure you that he doesn't think you're all bigoted. Yes, bigoted. He uses that word. Quote, not everyone worried about our economic challenges is bigoted, of course. There are real problems we should all be concerned about, whether it's declining opportunity, especially for those starting at the bottom, slowing economic progress, the pitiful state of education, or the political favors bestowed on some businesses. Now, and any of the other problems, stagnant wages, declining benefits, the destruction of unions across America, credit card, student loan debt hitting its highest levels, by the way, consumer confidence that's not very good, and, while Wall Street and big companies continue to post record profits, no, we're not going to talk about any of that. Those aren't any of the real issues. No. It's like the problems of everyday Americans do not exist for this guy, or in his bubble, or in his world. Now, again, this guy is from the Ayn Rand Institute, so if that explains anything, and he's writing in the Federalist. But anyway, Watkins is going to go into what the real problem is. The double standards for rich people. Now, he starts out by saying, virtually everyone agrees that we should judge people by their actions and the content of their character, not by the real or manufactured sins or shortcomings of other members of whatever group they happen to belong to. Now, maybe he should tell that to the people, and they've done studies of this, who, look, they did a study about resumes with black-sounding names and white-sounding names, right? Now, these resumes were the exact same. They just had different names. You had, like, John Smith versus Shaquille Johnson, right? Now, turns out that the black-sounding names got callbacks at about half the rate of the white-sounding names for the same position with the same qualifications. That seems to be a good example of what you claim to be up against. Now, maybe your job creators, your vaunted job creators, should stop using racist hiring practices. If you could, that'd be super. That'd be great. Now, regarding businessmen, for example, he writes, we should condemn those who lie, cheat, and steal. Okay, I'm with you. But we should condemn them as individuals for their dishonest and predatory actions. By the same token, we should praise individuals who earn their wealth through ingenuity and effort, and not make them pay for other people's sins. But that's exactly what we do. See, the problem here is, though, that when you focus on the individual, you're not talking about the system. The system right now that we have is based on predatory capitalism. Now, to thrive in this system, it does kind of help you to lie, cheat, and steal. It's not an endorsement of that system. It's actually quite the opposite. For example, Goldman Sachs paid millions of dollars, got paid millions of dollars for, I'm sorry, they had to pay the government millions of dollars for selling line loans to people. Okay. So what they did is that they bought up a bunch of questionable mortgages from Countrywide Mortgage, and they sold them to investors. They wrapped them up all nice. They marketed them as sound financial products, even as their own internal investment or assessments had raised concerns about these products. These are not good. These are bad deals. You probably shouldn't sell this. This stuff's going to explode. In fact, these were shitty loans, okay, wrapped up in these securities. Now, who cares? That's what they said. That's what these bankers said. They said, who cares? Let's sell them anyway. We're going to make a lot of money. Well, we saw what happened after they did that. Now, what about Wells Fargo, whose internal pressure for sales led to employees creating fake accounts in customers' names? Nobody got punished for that, by the way, at least nobody at the top. But you have to understand that corporate culture begins at the top, and it trickles down to everyone else. So when you have that kind of environment at the top, that's, hey, make as much money as you can, well, you've got to understand that this kind of behavior is going to be emulated all over the company. So, but anyway, what about all the other less than legal things that a lot of these banks have done to secure a bigger bottom line? What's wrong here is that there is a chase for short-term profit that hurts consumers, destroys banks, jobs, and lives, and also gives out golden parachutes to those who perpetrated these crashes, which rightly give big business CEOs a bad name. Now, we know they're not all like that, but the system tends to favor these people. That's why these banks are as big as they are. That's why they're as powerful as they are, because this system favors that. And of course, they lobby and they change the rules to make sure that the things that they do remain, I guess, legalish, that they can actually do this stuff. They deregulate. Now, as a result, of course, more of these types of people, these types of businesses tend to rise to the top. Now, on that, he writes, what we hear from today's inequality critics is across-the-board denunciations of successful businessmen. Untrue. Sanders contends the business model of Wall Street, which employs hundreds of thousands of productive Americans, is fraud. But it is fraud. That's exactly what it is. Again, that kind of behavior rises to the top because it ends up making them more money. Now here, let's see. He writes a headline for Sean McElway article in Salon tells us rich white people are ruining the planet, which is true. Richard Wilkerson and Kate Pickett write in their popular book, The Spirit Level, that rather than adopting an attitude of gratitude towards the rich, we need to recognize that what a damaging effect they have on the social fabric. Now, he has some arguments to use against this, and this is absolutely ridiculous. He says, replace the rich with Hispanics, women, or Jews in any of those sentences, and ask yourself, isn't this precisely the sort of prejudice we object to when it's targeted at other groups? No. Okay, so let's do that. All right. So rich white people are ruining the planet. He wants you to replace it with women or Jews, right? What kind of ridiculous argument is that? So you're telling me that when you criticize the fraudulent practices of some of these large banks or the track record of white, incredibly wealthy CEOs that right now are continuing to hoard more and more money instead of paying their taxes and deregulating, again, not all of them, mind you, but enough, that somehow is akin to racism. It's the same thing. It's the same kind of prejudice. No, it is completely different. I shouldn't have to point out the differences here. I shouldn't. It's ridiculous. Look, I don't know if you know this, but the CEOs actually do have a lot of power and a lot of privilege. Now, I guess the one right that they do not have, the one privilege that they don't have, is to not get their feelings hurt. And that's what this whole article is. This is this guy saying, you have hurt the feelings of the rich. And we don't like that. Oh, I'm sorry. Sad day. Oh, did you get your fee-fees hurt? Oh, I'm so sorry. No, I'm not. I'm actually not sorry. And it's okay. It's like, it's not like when their feelings get hurt that they can't go and buy a second home to make themselves feel better. While there are, of course, homeless people sleeping on the street. it seems a little hypocritical, okay? And look, I know a lot of wealthy, successful people are not assholes. They're not like this, right? But articles like this, where these ridiculous sycophants to the rich go out and write this, it does not help their cause. It doesn't. What they failed to do is they failed to understand that this kind of article inflames people even more. Because again, when you have wealth, you have privileges that a lot of people do not have. Okay? For one, no debt. That's actually peace of mind that a lot of Americans would really appreciate having right now. And number two, the ability to get the best healthcare in the world. America has the most amazing healthcare system in the world if you can afford it. If you're lucky enough to afford it. It's the same thing with education. America has the best education system in the world if you can afford it. If you have the connections to get into these Ivy League schools. They have these privileges afforded to them not because they're better people, but because of their wealth. While a lot of people right now, the majority in America, right now are afraid that they're going to lose their Medicaid or their Social Security or their health insurance through Obamacare. Okay? This is stuff that they need, but they can barely afford to survive on. But no. Watkins isn't done with his hot garbage of an op-ed, not by a long shot. Next, he touches on the dehumanization of the rich. Quote, prejudice encourages dehumanization and encourages demonizing the others so they are seen as less than human and therefore unworthy of respect. This is precisely what inequality critics are trying to do to the 1%. Oh. Inequality critics, no, they're not doing that. They're actually doing the opposite. You see, the poor and the homeless have been demonized. You don't have to look any further to see that than on Fox News. There's a little famous segment about, are poor people really poor?
Robert, I'm just going to give our viewers a quick run-through of what items poor families in America have. 99% of them have a refrigerator. 81% have a microwave. 78% have air conditioning. 63% have cable TV. 54% have cell phones. 48% have a coffee maker. I'm not surprised, they're only about $10. 38% have a computer. 32% have more than 2 TVs. 25% have a dishwasher.
Oh my God, poor people have stuff. That means they're not actually poor. Oh my God. This is, look, if that isn't demonization enough of the poor, I have another example from you, for you, and it's going to be, again, another Fox host that's going to blame poor people for just being bad people, and that's why they're poor.
True poverty is being driven by personal behavior, not an unfair economic system. So maybe we should have a war against chaotic, irresponsible parents. But America will never launch that kind of war because it's too judgmental and deeply affects the minority precincts. Therefore, cowardly politicians and race hustlers continue to bear false witness that our economic system is at fault rather than bad personal decision making. Talking Points has exposed that ruse before and will again. No matter how much money the government takes from the haves and gives to the have-nots, poverty will not change until personal behavior does. Addictive behavior, laziness, apathy will all override social justice programs.
You see, if the poor people only made better choices and weren't such lazy, irresponsible people, that's the message that you get from this. We've been demonizing and dehumanizing the poor for, I would wager, much of human history. So, of course, that makes his argument absolutely ridiculous. Because in our society right now, we laud wealth and ascribe certain attributes to people who are wealthy. They are moral. And you'll see that argument later on. They're rugged. They're exceptional. They're individualists, man. They work hard. They're good people. They have entrepreneurial spirit. Now, that's what we laud rich people as. People in poverty, as you saw, they're considered morally flawed in some way. Now, how disconnected is this guy? Incredibly, here's the next piece of his argument that, again, is going to make zero sense. He says a common myth is that you cannot be a victim of injustice unless you are powerless and disadvantaged, or that an injustice is okay if it's aimed at someone who isn't powerless or disadvantaged. But those are nothing more than crude rationalizations for injustice. Now, tell me, what kind of injustices are befalling the wealthy? You had no CEOs that went to jail for crashing the economy and destroying lives, which actually that is the injustice right there. That's not an injustice towards the wealthy. That's an injustice towards everyone else. And the fact that you can go and destroy lives and continue to make millions and millions and billions of dollars and you know, profit from destroying people's lives and livelihoods and the economy and not get punished for lying and selling bad deals. Well, that's an injustice, but that's not the kind of injustice he's talking about. Okay? No. Another injustice that doesn't happen to rich people. Wealthy people are not targeted by police. In fact, police go out of their way to avoid arresting people in wealthy areas because they are rich and powerful. And there's even a noticeable change in how police treat people who are privileged, who are wealthy, versus those who are not privileged, not wealthy, and oftentimes African American or Latino. For example, I'll go to the report in Baltimore. Now, community members living in the city's wealthier and white neighborhoods told the Justice Department that officers tend to be respectful and responsive to their needs, while many individuals living in the city's largely African American communities, which were much poorer, informed them that officers tend to be disrespectful and do not respond promptly to their calls for service. Members of these largely African American communities often felt that they were subjected to unjustified stop searches and arrests, as well as excessive force. This is stuff that does not happen in wealthier white areas, but it happens in poorer black areas. Okay? And right here, again, you have poverty and race going hand in hand. Now, in that same O'Reilly segment, I cut out that part where he talked about mainly the black community. Oh, we've got so many black babies being born out of wedlock, and we've got, you know, all this, all these people that are, you know, raised in single parent families, and it's largely African American. And if they had just stopped being irresponsible, then they wouldn't be poor. They wouldn't be in poverty. So that's what this is about, right? So you see that you have racism and economic inequality going hand in hand. Now, you don't see this among wealthy white Americans. These are actual injustices, not any injustice going towards the rich. Now, Watkins, of course, has a response for that as well. He says, when I discuss unfair treatment of successful businessmen, I almost always hear comments like, oh, boo-hoo, what do the rich have to complain about? Look at everything they have. This reflects a crass materialism, which amounts to the notion that money solves everything and that no one can be hurt by or object to mistreatment unless he's poor. No. When you have money, if you do get mistreated, it gets taken care of right away. There's no delay in justice. There is always justice. There is not injustice. When you're poor and when you're a minority, well, that's the story is much, much different. See, the whole thing, again, is a ridiculous argument. I know that money can't solve everything. We all know this. But in a lot of cases, it does seem to help. So let's be honest about that. Now he continues. Have we ever stopped to ask ourselves, what if a rich individual's dreams mean as much to him as my dreams do to me? What does that have to do with anything? What if he wants to be respected for his achievements the way I want to be respected for mine? What if he has made himself into a moral human being? Doesn't he deserve respect and admiration? And isn't it an indictment of our society when good people are treated like villains? And this is the crux of the argument here. He's complaining that rich people don't get enough respect. And for what reason should you automatically deserve respect? Because you're rich? Because you're successful? Well, good for you, dude. I don't care. I do care, however, when you use your money to lobby politicians to get special treatment and favors, or when you use your obvious disadvantages to kick the ladder away from those who are desperately trying to climb up it. We tend to have a problem with people who do that. That's why people don't like a lot of rich people because they happen to do that. They do the things that help themselves at the expense of others. Now, there are notable examples of rich people who don't do that. One of them is Nick Hanauer. Nick Hanauer, rich guy, capitalist, very, very successful. But the guy, he gets it. He understands. He's like, no. A lot of these CEOs, these job creators, like they call themselves, they think that they're at the center of the economic universe, but they are not. You know who's at the center of the universe? You guys are. You're the guys that actually make an economy work. That's where your wealth comes from, okay? Wealthy people, however, wouldn't exist without workers and consumers, okay? It turns out that without regular people, rich people wouldn't be rich. They would be nothing without us. For example, what good is an entrepreneur if nobody can or chooses to purchase their product? Now, unfortunately, we don't live in a system where that's determinative anymore, because you have some products that are mandated by law, like insurance, that people have to buy. And of course, that ends up putting us at the whims of companies willing to exploit us for more profit. The insurance industry, especially here in Michigan, is an absolute racket, the car insurance industry. And yes, I even have some issues with the individual mandate, though I understand why it's there. And I think it would be much, much better if we were to switch to a single-payer Medicare for all system. But that's a different fight for a different day. Now, again, when it comes to exploitation, well, he's going to get into that. Quote, when prejudice gets injected into the political system, as he believes it is, it leads to the government inflicting tremendous injustices on the victims. More and more, our political system treats economically successful Americans as resources for society's desires, rather than as sovereign individuals with an inalienable right to their own pursuit of happiness. Witness, for example, the plans Democratic candidates have for this country. Free health care, paid for by the rich. Free college, paid for by the rich. Larger Social Security payments, paid for by the rich. Of course, these demands are supported by the claim that the rich aren't paying their fair share. Set aside the fact that affluent Americans bear the vast, vast majority of the tax burden. Let's stop there. You know, it turns out that when you have all the money, yes, you normally end up paying more of the taxes. That's kind of how it happens. And it's not our fault that you sucked up all the money and now you have it all. You have more wealth than most of the country combined in a very, very small amount of hands. Yes, you're going to pay the lion's share of taxes because there's nobody else that has money. You don't understand this fundamental concept, okay? But again, this is a disingenuous argument in itself. Again, wealthy people pay more because they have more. And the reason the reason our system is set up like that, by the way, is because higher taxes will impact them less than, say, if the middle class, the poor, were paying those taxes or more of them. For example, a tax hike in the middle class can be absolutely devastating for their budget. A tax hike in the rich, well, that might mean one less vacation or one less new car or house in their collection. Now, they pay more because it impacts them less, because they have more resources, okay? For example, if you made $10 million last year and you paid $5 million in taxes, well, holy crap, that sounds like, oh, that's 50% of my earnings. You are taking 50% of my earnings. Well, guess what? You still have $5 million. You are going to be okay. You are not going to starve on that. You are not going to lose your home on that. You're not going to have to skip out on your electricity bill to pay your taxes. That happens to middle class households. That happens to poor households. Okay? That's the problem here. But he ignores all that in order to try to make a moral case. Do we ever so much ask, did they honestly earn their money? Did they gain it by dealing voluntarily with other people through an incalculable number of win-win trades? Don't they have a right to use their wealth to pursue their own hopes and dreams? The same way we each have a right to use our wealth to pursue our hopes and dreams. The thing is, though, most Americans, we don't have that kind of wealth. Most Americans are in debt because they try to create the opportunity for themselves. You know, by chasing their hope and dreams, by going to universities that have become incredibly expensive. And they become expensive because of capitalists like yourself. People who want to charge more and more for a service that people really need. So, and look, this says nothing about stagnating wages, how people are more and more productive. Americans are more productive than we ever have been, and yet wages have continued to stagnate. They're not even equal to, I mean, the minimum wage is worth less now than it was back in the 1960s. It's ridiculous. And again, you've got this victimization mentality from this guy. It is amazing in its tone deafness. Now, if you tax the rich for these things, college, healthcare, Social Security, these people are still going to be rich. However, the result of this is you're going to have millions of people with increased opportunity. If you want to think of it as an investment, think of it as an investment as your fellow Americans, your countrymen. It's an investment in America. Besides, the average Social Security benefit is somewhere around $1,300 a month. And it primarily goes to people who are elderly, retired, and disabled. Okay? Most of these people can't work anymore. And some of them can work only a few hours. They can't really chase their dreams. They're not living high on the hog. What they're doing is that all they're asking for the Social Security increase is saying, let's just, right, prices have risen over the past 20, 30 years to the point of where we can't afford it anymore. We need a raise. We need we need more to survive. And this guy's saying, but you're asking us to pay for it. We don't want to pay for it. Even though we can afford it, we would rather get another vacation or another big house or another yacht, so we can chase our dreams of having a fifth, maybe sixth yacht. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So again, this argument, it absolutely fails, but that's not going to deter him. He is going to continue to double down. He said, this is prejudice, plain and simple. What's worse, it is not directed towards traits that have no bearing on a person's character. It is directed at something that is, in fact, a moral achievement. Basically, he's saying rich people are more moral than you. If you were moral, well, you'd be like us, you'd succeed too, and you wouldn't have to beg us for handouts. So stop being immoral and just work harder. Stop being a bad person and just be rich. Just be rich. Yes, like it's that easy. He said, business success, that is, making a profit through productive achievement, not special favors from Washington, is something that deserves our respect and admiration. As we argue in Equal is Unfair, which is a ridiculous book that they wrote, this kind of success is enormously difficult and profoundly virtuous. It is virtuous. Except that he tends to ignore that, again, this isn't a moral issue. And if it is a moral issue, then why would you look at poor people and think, why don't we help them? That's the moral thing to do. But their morality is skewed. They think that, no, rich people deserve all the money. Poor people don't, because they're not moral people. They're not good people. They're bad people, and they deserve what they get. That's their morality. It is warped. It is different from regular people's morality. Okay? Now, he also, again, ignores the people who got to a wealthy position without actually having to do anything. For example, Paris Hilton. Did Paris Hilton build a business? No. She inherited a ton of money and basically did nothing. And there are stories all around of people that just inherited a ton of money and didn't do anything with it. Now, if you did something with it and you became more successful, that's great. Great. We love you for that. Okay. Keep doing what you're doing. Right, do you, boo. Right? But the people who don't do anything, well, you're not moral. You're not more moral than me. You're not better than me. You're not better than any of us. You're just somebody who got born on third base and thought they hit a triple. That's what's going on here. Okay? We have a group of people that are essentially trust fund babies that have not earned that wealth. Their parents earned that wealth, so they deserve no extra respect for that achievement. They are not, again, more moral. And look, I have a big issue, by the way, with ascribing wealth to morality in the first place. Money is essentially fake. This isn't real. It's a human construct, right? Having more of something that is essentially not real it doesn't actually make you a better human being. It just doesn't. And money, of course, was supposed to be an intermediary for barter. All it was is to replace an inefficient barter system with something that's universally accepted among everybody who has to trade, everybody who needs goods and services, which is everybody. Now it's become nothing more than a moral status symbol. Well, if you have more money, you are a better person by default. That is not true. That is not true. That is ridiculous and is fundamentally wrong. You who have more wealth are not better people because of it. Just like people who have less, they are not worse people. Now he ends it by saying, it's time we stopped saying screw you and started saying thank you. Thank you for what? Economic depressions? Boom and bust cycles? Rampant poverty? Ecological destruction? Oppression of people around the world? For cheap products? Governments that are purchased and don't represent us? No. No, thank you. I'm not going to thank you for that. Do you want to get right by people? You want to rehabilitate your image? Then stop being greedy. Stop pretending that you're a victim and start doing the right thing by helping your fellow man, by allowing some of that wealth to go to other people who are in need, for the good of all Americans and not just you and yourself. Unfortunately, they're never going to do that. There are some that will. There are some that do good work right now. But I think the majority right now is that they are not going to do so because, again, they think that they're more moral. They think that they're better than everybody else. And this is the thing. Unfortunately, that is the thing that these people and people like Don Watkins rail so hard against. Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.